She covered the camera with her underwear to escape the FBI's pursuit. The woman flipped the table, removed the steel pipe, springs from the legs, and used chemical materials to make a bomb. She stuffed the bomb and springs into the pipe and attached it to a fire extinguisher. With this, she created a rocket launcher. At this time, the FBI had already surrounded her, but she was ready. In the next second, the door opened, and the woman fired at them with the fire extinguisher, knocking everyone down. She quickly rushed out, grabbed a policeman's gun, and shot out the cameras along the way, successfully escaping. The woman's name is Shout, a top agent trained by a Soviet organization. The organization sent Shout to infiltrate the US as a spy to destroy the country. To gain America's trust, Shout completed several extremely dangerous missions for the US. After contributing greatly, she became an agent for the CIA. During this difficult time, Shout met a man who truly loved her, and she fell for him. They quickly married, and because of her past contributions, Shout no longer needed to go out on missions and was assigned to an office job at the CIA, living a peaceful and happy life. However, one day, a Russian officer defected to the CIA, and Shout was assigned to interrogate him. Unexpectedly, the officer exposed Shout's identity as a spy, even claiming that Shout would assassinate the Russian president at the US vice president's funeral in 2 days. The leaders outside the interrogation room were shocked and placed Shout under investigation. While 2 leaders were debating who should deal with Shout, the Russian officer used a blade hidden in his shoe to kill 2 policemen. The leaders were called away, and seeing this, Shout decided she couldn't wait any longer. Meanwhile, the leaders discovered that the officer had escaped the CIA building. As they ordered a pursuit, they also realized Shout had escaped too. With the building in lockdown due to the officer's escape, Shout rushed to the building's shaft and reached the 2nd floor restricted area. The leaders then began locking down her escape routes. Trapped on the 2nd floor, Shout created the rocket launcher as seen in the beginning, knocked out the FBI agents, and successfully escaped back home. But her husband was missing. Realizing he'd been captured, Shout quickly geared up to flee, as the FBI had already broken in, throwing in a stun grenade. They rushed in, but Shout had disappeared. The leader looked outside and saw Shout hanging there. She hid behind the air conditioner, and the leader, seeing the smooth building surface, dismissed his concerns. Shout climbed to her neighbor's window, where a little girl doing homework curiously let her in. As Shout was about to leave, the leader spotted her, starting another chase. This time, Shout wasn't as lucky and was soon surrounded by the FBI. At a crucial moment, Shout jumped off a bridge, landing on a moving truck, finally escaping the FBI. After seizing a motorcycle, she rode away and found a hotel to rest. The hotel was next to the church where the US vice president's funeral would be held the next day. Yes, Shout was indeed going to assassinate the Russian president. She began preparing her equipment, filling the bed with various weapons and explosives. She took out a tube of spider venom and studied the church's structure. She dyed her hair black, and the next day, the funeral began with the Russian president arriving. Hidden among the crowd, Shout sprang into action. As the funeral commenced and the Russian president and US officials took their seats, Shout used the sewer system to reach the church's basement. At the same time, a patrol appeared in the basement. The next second, Shout rushed out, swiftly taking down 2 men. As the Russian president was about to speak, Shout raced to the top, but security noticed the basement's anomaly, sending guards. Shout reached the 1st floor, and, encountering a guard, kicked his gun away, broke his wrist, and delivered a series of elbow strikes, knocking him out. Another guard appeared, but Shout grabbed the gun and used a silencer to kill him too. She then shot the sound system, causing a loud noise that distracted the guards, causing chaos. Shout threw her bomb at the ceiling, and the next second, it detonated, cracking the floor beneath the Russian president, causing him to fall beside Shout. As the US officials fled, Shout walked up to the Russian president, raised her gun, and shot him without hesitation. A leader spotted Shout, and she threw down her gun, surrendering. Soon, many officers arrived and arrested Shout. The Russian president was confirmed dead. As Shout was being transported to the FBI, she resisted, kicking the two officers out of the car. The driver was incapacitated, causing the car to crash off the bridge. Shout quickly escaped the wreckage, blending into the crowd, helping the officers. She grabbed a nearby hat, changed her appearance, and boarded a boat. The Russian president's death caused tension between Russia and the US, with both countries on high alert. The Russian officer, watching all this, was pleased. Shout then met with the officer, whose real identity was the head of the Soviet organization that trained her. He had gone to the CIA to test her loyalty. Now that Shout had completed her mission perfectly, the officer was pleased, but reminded her that marriage was not allowed in the organization. He then took Shout to where her husband was held in a water tank. Realizing her husband was doomed, Shout asked for a gun to give him a quick death, but the officer refused and ordered him to be drowned. Shout was in deep pain, but remained expressionless, surrounded by armed men. The officer, satisfied with her, recognized her loyalty after this trial. He then told Shout that the organization was moving to the next phase, seizing US nuclear weapons. Shout was sent to a location where a NATO agent would give her further instructions. After the officer left, Shout attacked him with a bottle, grabbed a gun and grenades, and began her revenge. She tossed a grenade into the lounge, then started shooting. The organization members were caught off guard, and Shout killed them all. After checking the destroyed lounge, Shout left for the meeting place, where she met the NATO agent, who turned out to be Zhao Shuai, a boy she grew up with in the organization. Now a NATO colonel, Zhao Shuai gave Shout her mission: infiltrate the White House and assassinate the US president. That night, Zhao Shuai, using his credentials, easily entered the White House, while Shout, disguised as his assistant, followed. Zhao Shuai informed Shout that others were involved in this mission, and the US president had gathered officials to discuss Russia's response to their president's death. As the president arrived, Zhao Shuai suddenly turned on Shout, grabbing a gun and charging at the president. Security responded instantly, shooting Zhao Shuai. Before dying, Zhao Shuai pressed a button, but the president escaped into an elevator. Guards rushed to move him to the 8th floor underground bunker. Shout, now in action, ripped off her disguise and pursued the president through the elevator shaft. She reached the 8th floor just as the security doors were closing. The president entered the command room and learned that Russia had deployed missiles, escalating tensions. Shout, now in the bunker, disabled the cameras and started taking down guards. Meanwhile, the president gained control of the nuclear launch system, but Shout disabled the power, leaving the bunker isolated. A guard discovered her, but Shout killed him. The security chief, realizing the threat, moved to secure the command room, but Shadi's leader, Desuang, turned on the team, killing everyone but the president. Desuang tried to force the president to launch the nukes, but the president refused, and Desuang shot him. He then began launching the missiles. Shout confronted Desuang, realizing he was the second agent sent by the organization. They fought as the missile launch reached 29%. Shout, desperate, ripped out the cables connecting the system, stopping the launch. Desuang, angered, shot Shout, but her bulletproof vest saved her. In the final moments, Shout outsmarted him, strangling Desuang with the hidden wire. Shout was then placed on a plane, but she escaped mid-flight, diving into a lake below. Surviving the fall, Shout swam ashore, ready to continue her revenge against the Soviet organization that killed her husband.